Hello, friends. When I moved to New York for seminary, I was the only Canadian on the block, literally. That already made me somewhat exotic, but it was my accent that really made me stand out. Now, my American classmates were familiar with a kind of stereotypical Canadian accent, think Bob and Doug McKenzie, and I didn't sound like that. Very few of us do. But neither did I sound like the first round of Canadian friends who came to visit me. It was my classmate Chris who finally said so, but I was unfazed. "You don't think my accent is natural, do you?" I asked archly. And in truth it wasn't. Whereas the stars of old Hollywood spoke in a mid-Atlantic accent, I had developed what my late friend Peter Gomes would have called a pewter baritone. It probably didn't help that the first time I read a lesson in church after my voice had changed, a well-meaning matriarch said I sounded like Orson Welles. At any rate, I find the whole business of accents fascinating. So last week I was delighted to read an article in Substack about why North American English sounds so different from British English. It all has to do with time and space. While accents have changed on both sides of the Atlantic since the days when the colonizer arrived here, ours is closer to the original, as it were. RP received pronunciation, with its non-rhotic R's and long vowels, is a late 18th century affectation. And unlike other accents, it doesn't tell you where someone's from, geographically speaking. But it does tell where they're from, socially speaking. We're a long way away from the first Christians and speak as differently from them as can be imagined. Over time, the church has developed its own strange accent, a farrago of rule and righteousness, sacrament and shame, though the harshness is sometimes elided. You have to wonder what those first Easter witnesses would have made of it all. A movement about forgiveness and love became one of judgment and rigidity. So now we have things like the prosperity gospel and Christian nationalism, which aren't simply affectations. They're signifiers used to determine who's in and who's out. There's a verse in an old hymn that says, "Oh, let me hear thee speaking in accents clear and still." And surely part of our problem is that we don't listen to God's particular accent of love and grace. We've listened to and patterned our own speaking after strident, harsh accents of shame and intolerance. But the original accent hasn't been entirely lost, and it can be reclaimed even by those whose patois and cadence resemble it only fleetingly. It just takes a discerning ear and proximity to its first speaker.